Hey everyone, how are you doing? Welcome back to another income report video. This relates to money I've made selling low and medium content books on Amazon KDP. I have been away from YouTube for a few weeks again, but I wanted to come on and just update you on how things are going and how my royalties are going in comparison to last year. As usual, I'll also let you know how much I spent on ads. So how was April? Well, last year, April was definitely higher than I expected at the time. In fact, most of the months last year were a lot more than the previous year, so it was quite unexpected. But this time, royalties were down from the previous year. So last year, I sold over 381 more books than in this April. And my two highest sellers of last year were the same this year, but this year they just sold less. And also, I had a fitness type journal that last year sold nearly 300 copies in April, but this year it only sold 11 copies. And I also had a couple of Easter activity books that sold quite well last April as well, but I had been running ads to them. The fitness related book also had no ads running to it this year, so that could be an additional reason that it didn't sell that much. And then if you add to that the royalty decreases of last year, then I can see that lower months are probably going to be more of a trend this year unless I start adding more books again. And obviously, those books need to sell as well. So I do have a collection that I've been working on at the moment, but I will see how those go. I am also thinking of just creating some books that will take less time just to add some more books, because ultimately, even if you make a few sales here and there, all those sales do add up. Because I have 500 and something, nearly 600 books, there are still a couple of hundred that sell frequently. So even if that's 5 copies a month or whatever, when you have a bulk of books that are all making that, it really does add up over time. At the end of last month, I also started experimenting with some low budget ad strategies. I've already recorded a video about these methods, so I'll release that video next week. But I started these in the UK, and so my ACOS was a little higher than usual by the end of the month due to these new ads that I've been running. Because obviously, typically you'll find that your ACOS is going to be higher than you'd like at first until you optimize them. As far as surprises go, the third bestseller that I had this month was actually a notebook, and that made over $600 in royalties on its own. It's not really being heavily advertised at all. It is part of a lottery campaign, but it barely gets any sales from that. So most of these sales are organic. And this notebook was published several years ago, but it always surprises me how much it actually sells. And there are some months that it sells a lot more than others. And this was one of those months. So I'm going to just run over my ad spend first. So in total, I spent $694 on ads. The ACOS overall was a little high for me this month in the UK, and that was partly down to me starting this new ad that I've been working on. And this was, I think, 50% ACOS or so at the end of last month, as I was still working on it. So overall, the ACOS was 28%, but so most of those ads were fine. The USA was fine at 22%, Canada was 28%, but not a very high ad spend, and Australia was only 23% and a low ad spend as well. So in total, that was $694, and by comparison, if you're interested, I spent $256 on advertising in the previous year. So you can see that I have increased the amount that I've spent on advertising, even though overall the royalties are actually lower this month than last year. My expenses were a little bit more this month as well, because I purchased a monthly subscription to BookBeam, which is a paid tool, and I will talk about that another time. But I also upgraded Midjourney to the next tier up because I ran out of fast hours and I still wanted to continue using it, so I decided I was just going to go up to the next tier. So now I'm going to go on to how much I made in royalties this year and last year. So in April 2024, I made $6,704, with the highest day being 332 and the lowest being 120. There were only a few days over the $300 mark, and many more between the sort of 150, 250 a day mark. And in the previous year, I'd made 7,964. This was a bit of an unusual month, I remember, last year because I had two really big days, both of which were mainly bulk orders for one book. So one day I made $866 and another was 767. I remember that May the 1st last year was also a really big day. So it was quite unusual. That day where I made 866 was selling a book that I didn't normally sell that much of. So it seemed like it was a bulk order for a company or something like that. And of course, that didn't happen this year. So actually, a lot of the days were, quite low. I had some in the hundreds and 200s, but because of those big days, that just took it a lot higher overall. So in total, then I made $6,704, and then I'm just taking off the ads and the tool expenses. So that comes to 5,873 for the month of April. So how did April go for you? And if you were on KDP last April, how did that compare to this year? Have you found that the royalty decreases made much difference, or have you found that because you've added more books over that time that basically it's balanced out? Let me know in the comments. But that's all for now, so thank you very much for watching, and I will speak to you again very soon.